Great cities take work. For Calgary, that's never been more true than it is right now. My name is Gian-Carlo Carra. For the last 11 years, I've been working for the citizens of East Calgary and with my Ward 9 neighbours to set us on a path towards our best future. But the work is not done. There is no better place to live than here. But today, Calgary is at a critical juncture, and this October, we will choose what kind of city we want to be. We can choose to build a Calgary that is a beacon of equity, a leader in the relentless pursuit of anti-racism and truth and reconciliation, so everyone has an opportunity to be part of our vibrant recovery. We can choose to build a Calgary that is at the forefront of climate action, that makes all of our decisions with a mind towards resilience, so that we can build a thriving economy that will sustain us long into the future. We can choose to elect leaders who embody the ideals of democracy, open dialogue, and thoughtful collaborative decision-making, so we can continue to rise together in what unites us. Now more than ever, we need to work together to imagine the city we want to be. I want to build a city of hope, a city modeled on the diversity of Ward 9's great neighborhoods, a city for everyone, a Calgary for everyone. I am unwavering in my work towards these goals. This October, I hope you will join us, and together we will rise. I'm Gian-Carlo Carra, and I'm asking you to re-elect me as your Ward 9 City Councillor on October 18th.
Hello and welcome to all of you friends and neighbors. My name is Ken Limaquello. I am a resident of Ward 9. You find me in my basement in Fairview, the beautiful neighborhood I have called home for 49 of my 49 years. I think I've always lived in Ward 9, but here's the funny thing, not for long with all these boundary changes and everything, I'm gonna be in Ward 11 soon. So as my parting gift to all my neighbors who will come with me, I wanted to talk about the legacy of what our councillor has done, where he hopes to go, and what that all means for us, the most important group. So happy to be with you here today to launch Gian-Carlo's re-election campaign for Ward 9 City Councillor. Councillor Carra, thank you for having me and welcome.
It is a real pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for agreeing to grill me today on why I'm going for a fourth term.
Yeah, I've got no skin in the game after this. I'll be in Ward 11 with whoever, so I can really take you over.
Basically dead to me.
I can really take you over the coals. Now, where are you today?
I am at the Calgary Heritage Roasting Company. It's an amazing coffee shop in the Snowden block, a beautiful heritage building, a former, I think, oil shop on Ramsey's future Main Street, 11th Street. Right in between the Ramsey-Inglewood station of the future Green Line and the Crossroads station. And they had a great 8 months of opening, and then they got hit by a global pandemic like so many of our local businesses. But they're making it work like so many of our local businesses, and it's really an honor to be able to use their beautiful heritage space to help launch this campaign.
And I can attest that their wares are brilliant. As somebody from your team graciously dropped off some iced cap for me here, and iced coffee. Heritage Coffee Roasters in Ramsey, delicious stuff. Okay, before we get into the meat of this, a few things to get into first. First, I want to let people know that we are streaming to several platforms, as you can tell. So we have volunteers monitoring all the comment sections. So please put your questions, and we want lots of questions. It's not going to just be me yakking away. I want lots of questions for Councillor Carra, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. If you are of the social media persuasion, and I know many of us are, there's 3 hashtags you need to know about, 3 hashtags. Carra, number 4, Ward 9, Carra 4, Ward 9. Hashtag East Calgary, capital E, capital C, hashtag East Calgary. And then the big one for the campaign, I'm told, is hashtag Rise Together YYC, capital R, capital T, good old capital YYC, Rise Together Calgary. That's where we want to connect. Secondly, of course, I want to acknowledge, and what a week to be acknowledging this after a really painful journey that we've all taken. I want to acknowledge that we are gathered on Treaty 7 land today. And I'd like to welcome Wendy Walker. Wendy has graciously agreed to lead us in a land acknowledgement and a welcome song. She's an Indigenous artist herself who makes Calgary her home, and she has toured nationally and internationally and has represented her city and our community and our province as a performer as far away as the Olympics in Pyeongchang, South Korea. Wendy Walker.
Oki, Tanse, Daneta, Ambawastach. In the spirit of truth and honor, we acknowledge Mohkinstsis, Calgary, Alberta, as being part of the home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, of the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Stoney Nakoda people, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley, along with Tsuut'ina First Nations. We also further recognize that this Mohkinstsis is the home of Métis Nation Region 3 as contained within the historical context of the Northwest. I'd like to take a moment also to acknowledge all other Indigenous people living in Mohkinstsis, as well as non-Indigenous people who honor us, our treaties, and the land. Hi, hi. Miwasin, Miwasin, Asenema, Asenema, Epetakote, Niwagomagan, Ota, Oma, Kitaskino.
Thank you, Wendy, for your beautiful words, your beautiful voice, and your words of welcome. Okay, Councillor Carra, let's get to this. My first question is the obvious one. 11 years? Why are you doing this to yourself and us again? Why are you running again? 3 terms. What's going on? What's the word?
Well, I was, to be honest, Ken, I was absolutely planning on walking away. And as like about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I was sitting down with my team. We were discussing a succession plan. We were talking about, taking a bow and stepping away. And then a number of things occurred that sort of changed the game. And obviously the big one was COVID-19. It prevented a lot of things that were going to be over the finish line by October 2021 from crossing the finish line as our municipal government, like governments around the world, scrambled to keep things afloat in the face of something that none of us sort of had a living memory of how to deal with. And it was very clear that our city was heading towards a real historic crossroads. And on top of that, I was deeply impacted by not only just the very clear way in which the pandemic hit different sectors of our society very differently. Black Lives Matter exploded out into the world. I was honored to help lead the city's response to that. We did an unprecedented inquiry into historic racism. And it was very clear that our city is experienced very differently by different people, and it's not equal. And that doesn't sit right with me. So my focus sort of expanded from a city of great neighborhoods, which are supposed to be about great neighborhoods for everyone, to very clearly a city of great neighborhoods for everyone. I think those things really sort of set me on a path where my team and myself we're talking about how we needed to finish the work. Great cities take a lot of work, and we want to finish that work. And then the final thing was that the city is at a crossroads, and we are either going to choose to not step up to this historic moment, or we will rise on our strengths. And when we rise on our strengths, we have to rise together. And it was for those reasons that my team went from advising me, take a bow, step away, to you got to stay, Giancarlo. And you have to be there for Ward 9 to continue the work, and you have to be there for Calgary. We're going to have over 50% turnover on council. So all of those things coalesced.
Let's unpack, you've said a lot there, and we'll get to pieces of it. But One of the things you said is there were some things that you wanted to get over the finish line that weren't there. Give me a couple of examples of something unfinished business for you that you want to take into 2021.
Well, I mean, really important, equitable, new economy building, environmentally friendly moves like the Green Line, critically important. Ward 9, of course, was hit very hard by the 2013 floods. And if we're going to survive and thrive long into an uncertain future as Calgarians, we have to accomplish upstream flood and drought mitigation on the Bow and Elbow rivers. We've got flood mitigation pretty much locked on the Elbow, but the work in terms of making the city flood and drought resilient on the Bow River, our major reach, has to be led over the finish line. The regional work is one of my major pieces of work. We have the opportunity to do things like build a rail line, a rail connection out to our incredible mountain parks. So there are so many exciting things that we need to finish and get over the finish line and really accomplish if we are going to rise. If we're going to, I think Calgary has two pieces of history. One is we've saved money in the short run and cost ourselves money in the long run, and that's a bad piece of history. The good piece of history is that at points in time, we have made significant investments, not in the city that we were at that moment in history, but in the city that we wanted to become. And we're at that moment, and we absolutely have to do that. And we have to do that with a clear focus on rising together, making a city that's equitable for everyone. COVID's taught us that we're all in this together globally, and we have to think about the next global challenge, which is climate action. And we're also in a place where our democracy is beleaguered. I always say that I was elected in an age of politics and full sentences, and now I'm enduring, along with everyone else, an age of the politics of anger, fear, and division. And we have to refocus on democracy and dialogue and good governance. It's that classic Canadian trope of good government. We have to get back to that. And I want to stand for those things as we build the city that we have to become.
A reminder to those listening, we're happy to take your questions on whatever platform you're watching on. If you have questions, the team's standing by to insert those in, and I'll ask as many as I can. GC, some of those big priorities you've been talking about that you want to get over the goal line, the Green Line not being a small one, those rely on real key relationships with not just within the city and within Ward 9, but within other levels of government. Maybe I'll challenge you. Is it better to have continuity of voice and advocacy with governments, or is it better to have new blood and a new face? You're not a new face. You've been around a long time.
No, I mean, I think the answer to that question ideally is yes, you need both. And, council generally turns over 1/3 every year. And now we're going to be well over 50%. So the new blood side of this is a foregone conclusion, and I welcome it. But we do need some veterans on our roster, and we need people who know, the history, the institutional history, where we're at in all of these files. I also want to note that, a really big change that we need to make is we need to retool our emergency response. I mean, for years, we have a very good emergency management agency and our fire department. We've got a really good healthcare system. Our police have acknowledged, along with the city of Calgary, that we have systemic racism that we need to, overcome and move to anti-racism. And the answer to that is to really not send the police and criminalize things that Calgarians are suffering from. So the project of of this city right now is the project that's facing cities across North America, as we acknowledge that Black Lives Matter and that we have to become anti-racist, is that when you call 911, if you're dealing with an addiction or a mental health issue, we need to have alternative service delivery. The police cannot go to every single call, and because they're on call 24/7, 365, they're the people who go. And for years, they've been acknowledging, like, there's nothing on my tool belt that can help with an addiction crisis. There's nothing on my tool belt that can help with a mental health crisis. And we have committed to building a 911 emergency response system that is 24/7 alternative service delivery, so that the demand on policing and the criminalization of things that are not criminal does not continue. And that's a fundamental thing to anti-racism.
Now, some of your colleagues on council currently and that are candidates to continue would argue what you've just said is defunding the police. It's taking away from our safety and our security. It doesn't sound like you're on that path at all.
Well, I'm certainly not. You know who else isn't? The entire leadership of the police and the police commission, right? And so, you know, there are people, and that gets back to my pillar of standing for good governance. There are too many people today who are interested in winning the game of politics at the expense of all of us winning the game of life. And you know, when defund the police is a deliberately provocative term coming out of the United States. And there are people who took that provocation and decided to, you know, provoke back and say, no, we have to defend the police. I'm not interested in that. I'm absolutely interested in acknowledging the systemic issues associated with the defund the police movement. I am not here to give oxygen to political projects that want to, you know, maintain systemic racism, systems of oppression. I'm here to stand for good governance. And every member of council who sat through our inquiry into systemic racism clearly understood that our BIPOC community, which is 37% of Calgarians, experience a different relationship with our institutions than the white majority. And that can't go on if we're going to fulfill our promise as Calgarians.
Well, you, as you said, you had the opportunity to chair those hearings in July of 2020. I know I looked at it from a media lens, but also tried to jump in and take a listen to what people were sharing. It was tough stuff. Take me to a moment during that where you said, you know what, I could walk away, but I need to stay.
Well, I think it was the whole experience. It was the fact that it doesn't matter what the education level was, what the background, what the newness of being a Canadian was, what the economic level was. Every single member of our BIPOC community was represented by people who came out and said, I have a different and lesser relationship with city institutions, with the police, with the education system, with the health system. And, you know, as a Canadian who believes in the project of Canadian pluralism, as a settler on this land, I buy into the dream of Canadian pluralism, and it has to be a pluralism for everybody, not just, you know, a pluralism for me and, you know, take what you get neighbor who doesn't look like me. That just, and you know, systemic racism has to be a project of the white majority. And so I am committed to that. I committed to that. All of council committed to that. The city committed to it. The police committed to it. And, you know, we have some late breaking politics trying to win the game of politics and not address those fundamental things. And I can't walk away for that reason and many more.
We're going to keep talking about some of these issues, but before we go on, it occurs to me, you're going to have to try to run a campaign in, well, some would say the end of the global pandemic, but others would say you still have to mind our P's and Q's. How do you actually safely run a campaign right now, especially as things are changing?
You know, that is a very interesting question, and it's one that we struggle with. This is going to be the hardest campaign we've ever run, not just because democracy has reached this sort of point of politics for politics' sake, but also because just how do you actually reach people and do the work of community building and organizing and meeting people where they are when you're not, you know, safely able to do that. So my campaign team, you know, on top of developing sort of like a 3-part strategy, which will be more digital and locked down like this, or that'll be semi-open, or will be more wide open, hopefully closer towards October, is we have reached out to the medical community. We have an amazing public health doctor named Dr. Franco Rizzuti, and he has agreed to be our campaign doctor. And he is going to tell us whether and how we can door knock when it's time to door knock, whether and how we can roll out bike parades through neighborhoods, whether and how we can, you know, meet people where they are or have to reach out to them digitally. And I think that that's a best practice that I'm proud of. I'm super proud of my campaign team, very thoughtful. For the last 3 years, we have, for the last 3 campaigns, I mean, we've really tried to innovate in the space of municipal electioneering. And this is the best team we've ever assembled. And it needs to be, because this is the toughest campaign anyone will ever run.
Let's talk a little bit about climate change. Why are you the councillor, and frankly, the city leader, to make us more sustainable, to make us more resilient, and to future-proof us in a city that is known to sometimes be a little resistant and hesitant to change in this regard?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, my core mission of Great Neighborhoods, which is a 5-point transformation of how we build and deliver services in our city, remains the same project. It's now, of course, we've added on to that the values of anti-racism. We've added on to that the value we're talking right now about climate action and governance. We've listed, and we will continue to list, a whole bunch of projects and generational investments that we need to do to meet this point in time. For me, Great Neighborhoods was always about climate, but it was never up in Calgarians' faces about climate, because, as you say, you know, we are living here in the oil and gas center of Canada, one of the oil and gas centers of the world. And it's always been an awkward relationship to sort of have a conversation about the obviousness of the need for long-term change. As far as I'm concerned, COVID-19 has changed the game in that regard as well, not just about equity, but also about the fact that we are clearly in this together as a global project of civilization. And, you know, we have come together as a global people to really minimize the ravages that this public health pandemic could have wrought on the human population. Knowing now that we can come together, we can put vaccines in people's arms in a year. It's incredible. And now it's time for us, acknowledging that we're all in this together, to acknowledge and explicitly tackle the next big global challenge that's coming straight at us. And that is, of course, climate change. So, you know, the time for soft pedaling or slipping climate action into our agenda is over in Calgary, and the age of acknowledging that we're all in this together as a global civilization, and everything we do has to be done with a mind towards climate action, resilience, and mitigation and adaptation. It has to be a central part of the conversation. And then that's another value that's driving me in this.
All right, let us take just a quick break in the conversation. Remember, folks, if you want to learn more about GC's platform and frankly the proof points of what he puts forward and how he's going to accomplish them, you can check out his presence on social media. The big hashtag to follow, of course, is hashtag Rise Together YYC. That's where you can find stuff, or of course on his campaign website. Let's take a quick moment to, you've invited some amazing artists and performers. So let's take a look. We'll introduce Harpreet M. Dayal. Harpreet is an interdisciplinary artist, a learner, a believer in the power of arts to connect and heal. I think you might have those things in common. GC, born and raised in London, England, she moved to Calgary in 2015. And she is sharing 2 of her poems with us that speak to the immigrant and new Canadian experience. So let's watch what Harpreet has to say.
Hello everyone. I was wondering what poetry I can share with all of you today. And as someone who is a newcomer, well, I've been here for over 5 years now in Calgary, I brought with me 2 suitcases and a whole bunch of stories. And so that's what I think I'll do. I'll share with you snippets of my story through poetry. So I'll share 2 today. They're both untitled, but the first one goes something like this. East London town. A narrow street in Dagenham, black asphalt roads, cracked pavements, lane with stone. Mousy rooftops, lining grey skies, and identical red-faced brick homes. Their partners stand opposite. Tall lampposts hunched over the road, turning on magically on their own. Sitting snug amongst them is my home. Garam masala, jeera, haldi, spices mixed with onions sizzling in ghee like perfume floats on our street. New smells for the neighbours, curiosity on their tongues. In our humble living room, aroma of freshly fried pakore, ground cinnamon tea enters, intermingles our loud wallpaper flowers, English tea before supper. A large doily covers the table, and in matching sofa covers, the smell of the same tadka lingers. The aroma has a choice of companion. On Sundays, Kirtan plays from a cassette tape. Vaheguru resounds in the whole house. On Fridays, it is a film from the 60s. A handsome Dharmender serenades Rajeshri, eyes lined with thick kajal and anger, upset with him for being late. Spice Girls are secreted in a little nook in my room. Pink flowers cover the walls here too, drowning in a sea of deep blue, like me in my salwar kameez covered head to toe. I listened to one of their songs from an old tape player stolen from Dad. All their songs memorized for my performances in the school playground. I am Scary Spice, powerful and unafraid. I flip through collecting cards, each Spice Girl looking back at me, stopping at her to study. I switch the channel in secret to MTV, mimic their dance moves. They dance like Shri Devi with big hair and ponytails. On Friday, we always have rajma for dinner. Always. When my mum calls me to pour sabji in bowls and serve round rotis, I hide the cards under a pillow, the music too. As I cross the room, I sing. I wanna really wanna zig a zig ah. I leave and close the door behind me. Me aima. And the second one, 2 suitcases, open on the floor of my bedroom in a sea of clothes. Memories and keepsakes float to the surface like letters in a bottle. Puzzled, I wonder how one packs their whole life in a suitcase. I pack heartbreak and lessons in with my shoes. Fold good memories between warm jumpers. I hear winters are brutal in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Dreams I keep close in the pockets of the jacket I will wear to the airport. I'll need them for where I'm going. I pack and unpack. I pack and unpack. My brother and sister peek in to see me drowning. They save me from the center of the sea. Their jokes, a life preserver keeping me afloat. After my brother tries to pack himself in the suitcase, my sister hums the tune for Tetris. She rolls strength in with my socks. She folds clothes with me and packs everything neatly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Harpreet. Wonderful words.
Beautiful, eh? Beautiful.
Absolutely vivid. But it begs the question, Giancarlo, some people would say the arts are wonderful, Harpreet's performance is wonderful, and the city has no role in creating the arts. The city has no role in paying for creating the arts. What do you say?
Well, that was a major point of battle in the 2017 election. And I'm very proud that the message was loud and clear received by every incoming member of council in 2017, that there will be no economic recovery without the arts. The arts, it's been proven time and again, it is very clear that the kind of vibrant, diversified economies we want to build run on the chassis of a vibrant arts scene. And this council from 2017 to 2021, despite the downturn, despite our extreme fiscal responsibility, in dealing with the downturn has significantly increased our funding to the arts, and we cannot stop with that. If you look at our downtown recovery plan, which is one of the big things that we need to execute on moving forward, the arts are a major part of it. If you look at our plan for main streets and transit-oriented development, as we take the vibrancy, the once and future vibrancy of our downtown, and we cross-pollinate it and we network it sustainably throughout the city, the arts have to play a major role. And so I'm a big believer in the idea that a city's values are not really found in its policy statements. A city's values are found in its budget. And we have made a bunch of policy statements as a city, and we have funded with one-time money the beginning of that work, but we have to lock that work in moving forward. And our downtown recovery plan is one of our major budget items. Our Main Streets and Transit-Oriented Development Fund, which is public investment flowing into the inner city rather than the generational work that we've done to subsidize growth on the edge of the city. We've turned that around, but now it has to lock in. Active modes and livable streets and living streets is a critical fund that we need. And then parks and recreation and the arts. We need 4 significant funds moving forward. We've spent the last 6 years cutting to the bone, driving the efficiency of local government. We've grown as a city, and we've kept our expenses significantly below growth plus inflation. We've made significant investments, but those investments now have to become full-time, constant, year-over-year budget items where we express our values.
Okay, we've got lots of questions now coming in from the back end. Feel free to put your questions in no matter what platform you're looking at. Our volunteers are collecting them. I'm going to ask a whole bunch here. Some are more dense than others, but there's another job you could have gone for, Gian-Carlo, not just Ward 9 councillor, and that is mayor. Why didn't you run for mayor?
Well, I'll give you a number of reasons. I mean, and the first one is that I'm an East Calgary guy. And I remember when we were first exploring building the Green Line, and at first it was going to be the Southeast Transitway. It was going to be a asphalt road on a dedicated right-of-way that buses would run on and eventually would run a train along it. And we got into a bus at City Hall, and the mayor and his staff and my staff and Shane Keating and his staff, and we rolled the length of the line, and we got out at every station area. And we talked about the transformation that this public investment could and should create. And I remember when we left Ward 9, I made the point to the mayor, I was like, I don't even feel like we're in Calgary anymore. And he said, Gian-Carlo, this is what all of Calgary, like 85% of Calgary looks like this. And at that moment in time, I realized that I am fundamentally an East Calgary guy and not an entire Calgary guy. But I will say that East Calgary and the diversity of Ward 9's neighborhoods are the model for our best future. These are the neighborhoods that built the Calgary we live in, and they're the neighborhoods that are building our best future. Number 2, it's a lot more work for very little more power. If I can't, as a consensus building, as a team member, get that done here, from where I am, I want to be part of a team, and I don't have to be the guy. I can be absolutely an integral part of a powerful team, and that's what I always seek to do. I'm a utility player. I will say that, the calculus, the electoral calculus in Ward 9 is that if I didn't step in and run as an incumbent with that name recognition, there's a very, very good chance that we would elect someone who was on the side of politics for politics' sake, someone who belongs to, the pernicious PACs of Save Calgary, someone who's on Team Jeremy Farkas. And that's something that I cannot abide. And then the final, and maybe the most important reason, is that we made a significant and historic and meaningful branding choice about who and what we are as a city when we elected the first Muslim mayor of a major city in North America. And I don't believe this is the time for, a middle-aged cisgendered white guy to, reassume the mantle of power. I think it's time for us. There's some very exciting women in the mayor's race, a woman of color who's a brilliant woman, And I think that that's really what the mayorship is a branding choice. And I think that we have to be extremely thoughtful as Calgarians about how we brand our city moving forward.
Okay, let's keep going on questions. Let's keep going on questions. Just about a week out from that frankly horrific discovery in Kamloops, you were involved, like you said, in the anti-racism side of things. How have you and how will your work with City Council push forward the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls? This is a crisis for our time, and it's got a long historic tale. What are you going to do?
Well, the City of Calgary has a really special roadmap. When Truth and Reconciliation Commission report came out, we undertook with our Indigenous Aboriginal Committee the White Goose Flying Report. And the White Goose Flying Report looked at the 94 calls to action that the commission called to all Canadians and said, which of these calls to action are fully and squarely within the wheelhouse of a municipal government? And White Goose Flying lays out the roadmap for our response. And the two, symbolic gestures like renaming the Reconciliation Bridge from the Langebern Bridge, important things like that. The two major things that we need to deliver are the Office of Indigenous Affairs in the reorged organizational structure of our municipal government. And that is work that is there and it needs to land, but we can only move as fast as the community. And it's important work that needs to be done right, not fast, and we're working on it. The other major thing that we need to land is the Indigenous gathering place. The calls to action say, we are a city of churches and temples and synagogues. There is no place in our city for Indigenous people to meet and practice their religion. Not too long ago, it was illegal for them to do so, horrifyingly, as a Canadian to say that. And so those are the two major things, but there's a ton of other things. It needs to dovetail with our anti-racism work, with our alternative service delivery of policing, and making sure that we have members of council who understand where we started, where we're at, and where we need to go, even as we bring in fresh new ideas from new members of council is critical in this work.
Okay, a couple of granular questions they're coming in now. This neighbor of mine says, I live in Forest Lawn. COVID is the least of our worries, they write. Homelessness, drugs, prostitution, property theft. It is highly visible in our area. What have you done in the past to address these important issues in those East neighborhoods? What's on the horizon for your priorities in East Calgary to fix them?
Well, and the first thing I just want to note, and this is in no way an excuse or an attempt to suggest that the concerns mentioned by that Forest Lawn resident aren't real and don't require real action, is that Forest Lawn consistently gives itself a worse rap than the reality on the ground is. And I can tell you that, social disorder, crime has exploded around Calgary since the downturn. And Forest Lawn remains lower than a lot of places in the city. But
statistically, maybe, but this person is seeing things out their front door.
No, absolutely. I just want to be clear about that. This is something that every Calgarian is facing, and so an alternative service delivery for policing is critical to be able to address those social disorder and issues and addiction issues that are spilling out onto people's front lawns. We are working on a significant point 2 of my 5-point Great Neighborhoods platform, which is ongoing, is to create community level governance that brings all of the actors that make the neighborhoods together in a facilitated conversation about where you're at, where you came from and where you need to go. And we have funding from the Council's Innovation Fund to undertake that work as a pilot in the communities of Greater Forest Lawn. And we're bringing in funding to do an ambassador program. So the social disorder and the crime surrounding City Hall and our civic center provoked a pilot to create an ambassador program that basically not only helped tourists find venues that they wanted to go to, but also helped coordinate social service response to homelessness, drug use, things like that. We have that funding now moving into place to set up an ambassador program in the communities of Greater Forest Lawn. And what we really need is we need that overarching governance structure where organizations like the businesses and the community associations and some of the amazing service providers up there, like the Alex Community Food Center, Sunrise Community Link, the Victory Outreach Church, can actually coordinate their actions. And it's a tough spot right now because some of those different groups that I just mentioned are viewing each other as the enemy rather than as collaborators in the solution. And with the funding for this ambassador program, we're going to bring that all together and actually start addressing that in the short term. And the longer term solutions, of course, will be the ongoing revitalization of the area driven by things like the Max Purple line.
Yeah, this is an important. I mean, there's another person that is writing in from Southview. Mm-hmm. They say due to COVID, some of the homeless people in our area have no place to, frankly, use the washroom, and have been using our residential areas. Could the city provide outdoor facilities for our homeless citizens? There's those systematic approaches.
Look, but that's a great point, and actually core to my platform and my equity-focused platform this time around is a public washroom program. This is important for an age-friendly city. This is important for an anti-racist city. And to be fair, I don't think that we will be able to roll out public washrooms everywhere in Calgary where we need. The cost will be prohibitive, but there will be places where we have to put public washrooms on the ground, and there will be places where we have to partner with business community to sort of have a Go Here program where there will be funding for janitorial services and an encouragement to make non-public washrooms public washrooms. And that's one of the key parts of my platform, and it's critical.
Let's talk about transportation. You've talked about the Green Line, but this neighbor says, how can active transportation be depoliticized and made more available to residents outside of the city center? They add, it's great to have cycle tracks downtown and in the Beltline, but why not to C-train stations? What can you do, particularly in Ward 9, to increase the opportunities for active transportation and a mix of transportation?
Well, we just recently produced a map called the Ward 9 Dream Network. And the Ward 9 Dream Network is a map of Ward 9 drawn by the amazing Ramsey artist, Sam Hester. And it highlights three things: all of the amazing ways that you can get around by active modes in the ward today, all of the things that I fought for over the last 10 years and that we're actively delivering right now. And there are a significant number. And east of the Deerfoot, we are delivering this summer the 19th Street multi-use path along 19th Street runs parallel to International Avenue. On the south side, it is one of the widest streets in the entire city, and it runs from the escarpment all the way to 52nd Street. And we are putting in the first east of the Deerfoot dedicated cycle infrastructure along there, and from 26th up to the Franklin Station, delivered this summer. But that's just the start. So the third thing that the Ward 9 Dream Network does is it talks about all the things that we need to deliver. And I was talking earlier about the budget. We need a dedicated fund in the budget year over year that even shows up on your tax bill what percentage of your dollars are going to capital infrastructure to create livable streets and active modes. The term that's now being used is the A5 network, which stands for all ages and abilities, all ages and abilities all the time. That's the A5 network. And it's not just about cycling, it's about wheeling, it's about walking. And we have a great system in Calgary today, especially per capita, especially given how much of an auto-dependent city we are. But we absolutely have to build out that system. The Ward 9 Dream Network is my contribution to the conversation, but it will take money, it will take political leadership, and it will take community activism. And I'm 100% here. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running again, is to make sure that we land these things.
Let's talk about political activism for a minute. This questioner asks, How will you reach out to BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color in Ward 9 and include their voices and needs in your platform? It's one thing to protest. It's another thing to actually be heard and actually be included in the political process of which you are the leader for Ward 9. What are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I'm very proud of assembling a team that is more representative of Calgarians than we've assembled so far. But we can always do better, and we're here to listen. I'm always one of the criticisms that I receive is that I'm a know-it-all, that I have an agenda. I absolutely have an agenda. I certainly do not know it all. But my mission is to have very good conversations with everyone I meet, to be challenged, to challenge, and to learn through that process. And to anyone who wants to get involved with the Carra for Ward 9, East Calgary, Rise Together mission this election, please get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. We want you to scope out our proposed platform. We want you to help us build it. And we want marching orders so that when we're successful on October 18th, we are informed very clearly about what we're going to accomplish for the next 4 years. And so what I've thrown out are the suggestions of myself and my team, but we're always looking to refine that and enhance it. And that's how I've actually done my work over the last 10 years. Clear mission, but constant touch-ins through strategic planning work with community.
I think this question builds on the last a little bit. This person writes, on the topic of good governance, which you've talked a lot about here, this pandemic has given people more access to take part in public hearings than ever before. It's easier now because of technology. What will you do to expand public engagement of all levels of city projects so those voices can truly be heard, and not just, if somebody doesn't have time to sit in on a city council meeting or the priorities in finance 8-hour schmozzle, what can people do, and how are you going to support that?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot of governments shut down through COVID-19 and are slowly getting up and working. And the amount of work that the City of Calgary government has done through this pandemic has been astonishing. And it's been astonishing because very early on, we recognized that you could not only do meaningful work online, but you could actually do more meaningful work online. And I think the two big indications of that was our historic and equitable decision to ban conversion therapy. And that was a 3-day public hearing where we heard from people both for and against banning the public hearing. And we were worried about whether we could hear from people and whether we could conduct a fair and honest hearing regarding a bylaw that would significantly change the landscape of Calgary. And what we learned was the ability to phone in, to speak, not sitting there at a microphone in an intimidating chamber, but to call in from the safety of your space and to speak your truth was transformative. And it was with the strength of that experience that we were able to move on to the inquiry into systemic racism. And so I will commit that we are forevermore, even when we go back to in-person meetings, we will always have an accessible phone-in system, and we are always looking to sort of refine it with more scheduled times and more certainty for people. And then, of course, my dream, of course, is that when we have public hearings and stuff like that, that child minding and child care and things like that are there and available for Calgarians, so that we don't always hear from the usual suspects. The overwhelming majority of people who come speak to us are the people who have the time and the means to do so. And we recognize that we need to hear from everybody, and we need to make decisions for everybody.
Okay, let's take a break, a performance break, give you a chance to catch your breath. There's still some more questions coming here. But it's now my pleasure to introduce to you Misha Maseka. She's also known as Lemba, Eswatini-born South African and Australian-raised Zambian-Canadian multiple disciplinary artist. Gian-Carlo, she's a poet, a vocalist, a filmmaker. She seeks to celebrate, highlight the specific stories of womanhood, human connection, and the African diaspora. Let's watch this video.
Hi, my name is Misha Maseka. I am a poet, a writer, and a filmmaker, and today I will be reading a short snippet from one of my narratives called Prince, Jeff Goldblum, and Home. It had been 15 years. 15 years on the road. 15 years taking time away. 15 years since I'd been back home. It wasn't until recently that I began to feel the guilty of my absence. I've lived on the go, and back and forth and all over. As I interacted more and more with brothers and sisters from the motherland who had recently visited the motherland, I started to take note of their reference to back home. Do you know, back home, things are done a little differently, yeah. You know, back home, I would never get away with that. You know, back home, you would be married by now. And after every sentence, there was that side eye, judgment, and confirmation of me not really considering back home to be back home. But it is home. Because somewhere neatly tucked in my mind are warm memories of a lush garden, always smelling of freshly rained on ground, countless mango trees, and of course the lychee tree in the front left yard where we ran in circles till we fell down. And the long road dressed with a canopy of trees and carpeted by soil that would give us copper feet. By the time we reached our destination of the tuck shop, our feet would be sporting rust-colored socks while we handed over the 2 kwacha in exchange for bags of sweets. Every time these memories unfold, I smile to myself. Yes, it is home. It's chaotic and blessed and full. The land of my mother and her mother. The legacy of my father and his father. What's peculiar about the notion of back home is knowing that I never really lived there. I was born in Eswatini to Zambian parents. I grew up in South Africa, Australia, and Canada. Yes, I think my parents are spies too. And though I do not fluently speak the language of the home I claim to be mine, my name, my skin, my memories and love all come from the figurative 4 walls of that home. The thing is, I did not come to stay. I didn't mean to stay away so long. I was a child uprooted and displayed after all. And day after day, month after month, year after year, we never went back. Weddings were had, funerals passed, and we stayed away. And not for spite or resentment. To put it bluntly, it was expensive. And so, 3 years shy of 30, I and my immediate family went back home. Stepping back onto African soil felt like Orpheus returning back to Eurydice, felt like Issa reconciling with Molly, like Mariah Carey hitting a high E in the late 90s. It just made sense. Where breathing and laughter come easy and roses bloom in the winter freely. We went all over, a pilgrimage of sorts. We started in South Africa, in the town I spent the majority of my childhood. We visited the Swazi-South African border. We visited my childhood home. Funny how what felt so big, so magical, and endless looked small and confined. Everything looked dry and unkept, forgotten. Regardless, the memories still unfold warmly and carefree. For legacy is what is remembered, not what is forgotten.
Such vivid words from Misha Maseka. Beautifully done. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Before we go, I want to cram a few more quick questions in here to get the richness of this conversation and your answers, GC. On accessibility, this questioner asks, it's very specific. The patio extensions have made our city streets completely inaccessible, she says, or he. People live with disabilities have major roadways completely blocked because of restaurants. So that's the specific, but the bigger question is, what are you going to do about this, but also to ensure equitable access to our public realm for everyone, which is something that is very, very important. Let's talk about patios first, because that's, I mean, summertime's coming.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I want to say is that the patio experience, I think, is something that I hope lives on with Calgarians the same way I hope, I pledge to make sure that a hybrid between in-person and digital meetings is how we run our government. We had a patio program before, and there was a lot of red tape, and it took a long time, and there wasn't really a belief amongst business owners that there would be enough uptake. And so the way it will run out in the future when we're not in a pandemic environment is that we will move the patio into the parking lane, and as opposed to the other way around. And we moved the patio, we moved the pedestrian circulation away from the restaurant so that we wouldn't get that cross-pollination between servers and people and walkers by. And that was a pandemic response. And so it is, it is not an end game. It does have accessibility issues, and I acknowledge those. And we're making sure that our road staff, as they set these up, are actually taking wheelchairs and making sure that manually they can maneuver these things. Having said all of those things, the end game is a patio culture that does not, put the primacy of automobile storage on our right-of-ways, that actually is going to have people outside and enjoying it. We will be focused more and more on, we won't mind that cross-pollination between people walking and wheeling on their way and the restaurant and the patio doing that. It won't be a health imperative. And so that'll be a singular hit. And then the other thing, of course, is that I'm talking about that fund for livable streets. We have historically lowered the speed limit as of May 31st to a base speed limit of 40. And as we design our neighborhood streets moving forward, our residential quieter streets will be designed for 30, and our main streets will be designed for 40, which makes those patio experiences and extensions all the more livable. And we need to have a fund to make sure that we do it right, with a mind towards beauty, but much more, and livability, but much more importantly towards accessibility for all.
Talk about the bigger picture now, that whole notion of equitable access. And really what I think they're calling for is legislation enshrines accessible and universal design right into planning. Where does that fit in? The COVID context is one thing, but it'll be done soon. And then how do you actually embed principles of inclusive design right into the planning frameworks?
Well, I mean, I think those, so point 3 of great neighborhoods. Point 1 is, if great neighborhoods make a great city, let's design for them and make sure they're equitable neighborhoods for everyone. Point 2 is, neighborhoods are not just places, but they're people. Let's get them at the table and provoke all the right conversations and develop all the right leadership and move things forward that way. Point 3 is, let's reorganize how our civil service serves Calgarians. And that organization, that historic reorganization, is underway. We have been the same organizational structure since the 80s. We were modeled on a multinational corporation that produces a variety of widgets. And now we are reorging to a city that plans, delivers, and serves a city of great neighborhoods. And so having all of the planners, we used to have, right now we've got land use planners who sit in the planning department. We've got transportation planners who sit in the transportation department. We've got parks planners who sit in the parks department. All of those things need to come together in a beautiful way. And you have to think culturally, and you have to think about heritage, and you have to think about accessibility. And those are the things that exist between the lines. So putting all of our planners serving our great neighborhoods in one place, plugged in to our local leadership, so that our general service delivery can be catered to the individual needs of every neighborhood with universal design standards in place. These things are underway. They're not delivered yet. And that's another reason why I'm running.
Is this what guidebook is about? Is that the same trajectory?
The guidebook is absolutely about that, but the guidebook right now is a skeleton, right? So the transformation, point 1 is, if great neighborhoods make a great city, let's deliver that. The guidebook does 4 things. It's now called the Guide for Local Area Planning. Number 1, it operationalizes our municipal development plan from 2009, which said we have to grow up rather than constantly sprawl outwards. Number 2, it operationalizes it through local area plans that are undertaken with local communities That's fundamental. Number three, it drives investment, reinvestment into those communities. And number four, and this is really in the weeds policy wonky, but our land use capabilities, which is the power of the municipality, and our policy, which is the aspirations of our city, have never worked together. And this brings them together in a meaningful way. And it starts loading them all together with different, so it's not just parks planners, it's not just transit planners, it's not just cultural planners, it's not just heritage planners, it's not just accessibility, it's everybody doing that work together. And that's where we need to get to. And we're almost there, but we need to continue to do the work. And that's why I'm running.
All right. One moderator is going to take prerogative for one question, and then I'm going to leave you a chance to make your plug to the fellow citizens watching. My question is very simple. One of the biggest challenges we've got is our downtown. How does Gian-Carlo Carra, fourth term councillor, help us turn downtown around? Because we all benefit from that if that happens. Now, I know it's not a 4-year plan, it's a 20-year plan. But what are the things that need to happen? What do you think of the downtown strategy that was just revealed last month?
I think the downtown strategy is exactly what we need to do. But honestly, it's $1 billion worth of work, and we've got $200 million. And so we really need to put the budget behind it. And the downtown plan is the same kind of approach that we need to do as mini downtowns in our main streets and our transit-oriented development throughout the city. So that work needs to be funded. I believe very much in that holistic approach, the idea that the age of the single-use monoculture place is over. The age of the mix of use and diversity and vibrancy is what will drive the next economy. It will make dollars and cents. It will make environmental sense. So I'm 100% committed to that, and we need a council that understands that, and then more importantly is willing to fund it. We have amongst the lowest taxes of all major cities with an incredible service load, and we've actually gotten more and more efficient since the downturn began. We're at the bone, and we need to start building up the flesh and the muscle and the sinew so we can really excel into the future. And that's going to require a very thoughtful conversation with Calgarians and amongst the council that they elect.
Gian-Carlo, it seems you have the energy still. It feels like you still have the fire in your belly.
I'm passionate, Ken. I'm passionate.
You're not going to win this alone. You'll probably need some help. This is your moment to talk to the crowd. And how can they get involved if they want you to represent them?
Okay, well, obviously, this is going to be a crazy campaign. The city's future hangs in the balance, and I need your support. Everybody who's tuning in, thank you for taking time out of your Sunday to participate in this. I'm very thrilled. I thought those art pieces were amazing. I think that Harpreet and Misha and Wendy just did a fabulous job. I really appreciate your passion for Calgary, your passion for Ward 9. This has been a great conversation. We need to continue the conversation, and I need people to donate. I need people to volunteer. I need to put up signs. We need to create word of mouth networks because that's really what we're going to win on. It's going to be a very contentious campaign. There's going to be a lot of misinformation that characterizes democracy. So we need to be able to stand proudly and talk to our neighbors as thoughtful human beings. Because I honestly believe that in a vacuum of information, with fear and anger rampant, it's designed to have regular people step back. And we all need to step forward and work together, and we need to rise together. And so please join us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, the Great Neighborhoods mission is the backbone of what we're doing. The values this time around are, anti-racism and justice, climate action and long-term sustainability, and good governance. And then we need to actually affect those generational investments and programs that will build the Calgary, not that we are today, but the Calgary that we need to become. And so I need to hear from you about what that looks like. We will be rolling out platform pieces, getting specific about all of those things. And we need to hear from you throughout the campaign. Join us and let's rise together.
All right, let's end with a quick ditty coming out from Wendy Walker. I'll add 2 more V words. Get a vaccine and then eventually vote. Here's Wendy Walker.
Are we doing Wendy before I say thank you to everyone?
I think we're doing Wendy now.
Okay.
Carra leads with honesty, integrity, always working to better his community, committed to Ward 9. Gian-Carlo gives us his time. Vote Gian-Carlo, Councillor for Ward 9.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ken, so much for you laid it out exactly the way it is. I'm so sad to be losing the great neighborhood of Fairview. What a special place and special people. And thank you for doing this and helping me launch. I want to thank the incredible Ward 9 business, the Calgary Heritage Roasting Company in the historic Snowden block, in the future Main Street of 11th Street in Ramsey. I want to thank Wendy Walker for her beautiful land acknowledgement, her song, and for being just such an amazing person. Harpreet Dayal and Misha Maseka, their wonderful performances. I want to give another shout out to my campaign team. As I said, I've always been so amazed at the amazing Calgarians who have come together and have helped me over the last 3 terms to win elected office. This is going to be the toughest campaign ever, and this is such an amazing team that we've assembled. And there's room for more if you want to join us. And of course, to everyone who spent time on their Sunday to participate in this launch, thank you. Please donate, volunteer, get a sign, and talk to your neighbors. And together, let's rise.